Alright, we're going to do an oil change on a Honda 450R. So tools you're going to need, obviously a ratchet. You are going to need a 17mm socket. You are going to need a 12mm socket. You're going to need a 10mm socket. And you're going to need an 8mm socket. And you're going to want an extension too. Obviously new oil filter. I always go Honda OEM. And there's a crush ring taped onto that. And then I'm just using a GN4 Honda oil, 10W40. There's a couple different options you can use, and I'll give you one towards the end of this video on actually another option that would kind of surprise you, but it's actually really good for these engines too. So we're going to start by warming it up a bit. Honda 450Rs, you can give them a little bit of gas, just a couple blips. It'll actually prime the carb, make it a little bit easier to start, but generally speaking, don't give it any throttle or anything like that when you're trying to start it. It will just kick back. Warm it up for a couple minutes and it'll help the oil flow. Alright, we'll let it run for about 2 minutes. It's good enough. Just it helps, warm oil helps circulate things a little bit better. So alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to start by removing both the caps. Your oil fill cap is right here. And then on the other side for your transmission, oil fill caps here. Watch the exhaust if you just had it running. Alright, start with your 17mm. This is for the engine oil. And right in the center, right there, you see the little hole? That's going to be your drain plug for that. Alright, so that's draining out. Next is your transmission oil, and it's actually that bolt right there, and it's a 12mm, and it'll actually come out, it's pretty long, it's about that long, and that's going to be for your transmission fluid. So take that out, let transmission drain. Right, like so. Alright, so that while that drains, this is where you're going to need 8mm, and you're going to remove the cap for your oil filter. You're going to have one short bolt, one long bolt. Long bolt goes in here, you can see the indentation. Just pop that off. Try not to use any sort of, see the O-ring tends to kind of stick a little bit. If it's really tight, try not to use a screwdriver and gnaw this up. Just do the best you can. If you could try a plastic scraper or anything like that, just give it a little bit of leverage if you need to. Then here's my oil filter. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take that little spring out, set that somewhere clean, not going to get dirt on it, and then we're going to take the filter off. Then we're going to install our new filter, and this little O-ring side here that faces down, because these are your oil passages that feed that filter. Alright, so we got the new filter on there. Now keep in mind, it's a 450R engine. It takes a lot of abuse per displacement of the engine, so just inspect that oil filter, make sure you don't see any glitter on it. If you do, you might have some bigger problems. There's only one way to put this on actually, but for easy reference, these two holes, that top hole faces up, and you can see the oil passage right there, so it's gonna line up right with that and just slide right in. My bad, I actually did have it backwards. It goes this way. Yeah, trying to do this one-handed kind of sucks, but go finger tight as far as you can, and tighten evenly to make sure it don't crimp this O-ring. Don't trust your hand with it. I believe the torque spec is around 7 foot-pounds for these. So just make sure not to over tighten it and strip the case. New crush washer. always hand thread the bolt for the transmission. I actually have stripped it before. You can just replace the bolt. It actually strips before the aluminum does, believe it or not. So, but just be careful with it. And then I believe it's like 10 foot-pounds or something for that. Okay, then on this side here is when you're gonna need the 10 millimeter. You're gonna pull this little bolt out right there. Now this is your fill check. So basically what happens is once you fill this crankcase up, you just pour it in slow until you start to see it drip out, and then you put the bolt back in. Alright, and just like that, got oil flowing out of here. I think I did add a little bit too much, so not a big deal. We'll just let that open for a minute or two just to drip a little bit. Not that I way overfilled it. Then we're going to do the engine oil. Now, as far as how much to add to that, it's not a whole lot, and it's one of the biggest reasons you want to change your oil often. Some people do it every ride, some people do it every other ride depending on how far you're going. Some people change the filter every other ride. Look, you can do it as much as you want. Oil's cheap. This oil breaks down real quick with heat, and just because it doesn't have a large capacity. So 04s, 05s had an oil cooler, 06 Plus doesn't. Just change the oil as frequently as you want. Oil's cheap, engines aren't. So to do a rebuild on here, which you got a 450R, eventually you might have to if you run it enough. But this can prolong the life of the engine greatly by changing it as much as you possibly can. I fill it up just till it's a hair above the full mark. Did go a little bit over full, but it's okay. These will consume a little bit, just don't overfill them like crazy. And then you're going to want to torque this to probably about 7 foot-pounds. I'm giving you these torque specs not from Honda, but by the bolt size. So these are 6 millimeter bolts, and generally that's the torque spec you use on them. I'm going to tighten it up. You can use your torque wrench. Alright, drain plug's all tightened up, filled with oil. Either cap fits on either side. Give it a run. Let it run for a couple seconds, shut it back off, let it sit for about a minute, and then see where your oil level is on there. It was actually a long time since I changed the oil on here. Not what I'd usually do, but as you can see, it's coming up. Once you let it set, just make sure you're at that full mark. A little bit over is okay, not too much over. But just make sure you're not down here or anything like that. Keep it at the full mark before you go riding, because you might be surprised when you come back, you might be down towards the low mark. It is normal for them to consume a little bit of oil, like I said. But, you know, keeping it full is basically the best way I could say to actually maintain these. So this oil change though for me too was not a normal oil change. I actually wanted to run this thing specifically around 8 hours. The reason why is this actually had a high zinc oil in before, and I have a built top end. I did the work myself. So there's a high compression piston in here, and new cam, new everything. So if you notice my oil was a little bit on the gray side, that's break-in material. So I am going to flush this out one more time. I probably should have did flush before I changed the filter, but for video sakes, I wanted to show doing the filter and everything all at once. But speaking of which, I'm going to show you a good break-in oil or an all-around oil that you can use in these things, and it's very cheap. Crazy, right? The thing about diesel oil is it actually has a high zinc content to it. Basically, the film strength on this oil can cushion a lot better than what most standard motorcycle oils will actually do. Yes and no. I don't know how good it is at taking temperature, but when you run you know, a cam that's got a high lift and everything like that, it supports a lot of cushion towards your tappets, everything like that, so you're not getting as much wear. And it's the same weight that you run. It's 40 weight oil. I put 1040 in. 1540 is okay. You're not looking at much difference on there, but because of that, this is actually a great motor oil for the 450Rs. So that's another recommendation that I have for it. You can use AMS oil, whatever you like, just make sure it's compatible with the machine and what its operating conditions are. That's it. I'm gonna try to post more videos and stuff on how to do all kinds of maintenance stuff, repairs, and just a little bit more about these, especially for beginners. So this is a high maintenance machine, any 450 is, so you know, it is good to keep up with it, and don't abuse it. It's made to be abused, but don't abuse it with maintenance. So that's the biggest thing. So I can give some pointers, but yeah, I'll see you next video.